Good morning, team. Welcome back to the stream. Today is Thursday, October 12th. Just getting in to take a look and let's see. Take some more profit out of VXX today, I guess. We're still getting that bounce on SPY. We had pulled into 418s and 420s. As soon as we reclaimed that 23.6% fib, we got the bounce back through 430 and 435. Yesterday grinded up into 437s and pulling back a little bit today. We can look at VXX at the same time. We originally were shorting over 25 and covering back into 22. We got a ramp back over 25 and 26 where we kept adding last week. Every time SPY pulled back into those lows, I was shorting additional VXX and VIX with a mix of the equity and the short premium on VXX. We've seen a pullback under those 21s where I was covering yesterday, under 22s into 21s where I was covering at the close. I did sell a little bit back after taking some profit, and obviously we're still holding up on the market. This is continuing to decay this morning. If we sell off on the market, this could get a faster spike, and I wouldn't mind adding back to that as well. As always, if there are any tickers that you'd like to review, go ahead and post those in chat. Let me jump into the private client fund. And we had earnings on DPZ. I'm going to sell some more calls on this. My last round had expired. Full wins. We had seen that ramp into 400s, 415s, wasn't really breaking out. Sold the premium over that mark. We got a retest into 400s where I added back and left out the price alert at 407s. That was never retested. You can see as 400s failed, 385s failed. We got some continuation into 365s. Earnings pulled it a little bit lower and bounced back over. I'm going to look at selling 380s to 400s today. I think we've got room and time. There's typically a stronger bounce through November. I think it'll be less pronounced this year. We did close the gap though. There is room to bounce and try to recover VWAP. I'll probably start with 385s. If we move up a little bit, sell some 415s as well. I think there's some more premium there on some pretty low risk, and it's usually been pretty good to us with the trades that we've taken on it. Let me see what the top gainers are on the day. More profit out of Boyle, more out of VXX, even more out of Beyond. A little bit of a gap down and sell off after yesterday. So let's see. This averaged in is 1018 from that last point where it was sideways a bit, averaged in full size and was already taking profit through 9s and 8s, but we got a little bit of a bounce back over 9. I added slightly, not a lot, not enough to affect the average really, but getting a little bit extra gap down and sell off this morning. Should see new lows over the previous lows, and yeah, still not much recovery at all. I think you can still sell short calls over the $9 mark. Got CVNA pushing 13% on swing short equity as well. We never retested the upper alert at 43s, and we're chopping around 36s. Our lowest alert was left out at 31s, and I think we'll still get into that zone. Seasonality wise, should be flat to low into the end of the year, and probably touching that lower band and hitting our alert. Yeah, back to that breakout area, maybe even 25s over time. We'll see how it goes. Obviously the whole sector swings short, car and Hertz as well. Still waiting for a retest on car to look at adding back to some short premium. I'll probably do that before the end of the day today. Then Hertz getting into some pretty good equity profit again. There was a slight bounce this week, but hasn't really gone anywhere. As it starts to roll over again, I'll probably sell some more 1250 calls. We'll just take those three in tandem with each other. Ford got a little bit extra hit with a gap down this morning on another strike out of one of their plants. Still swing short on equity with this. Some short calls. We had the bounce this week where we talked about adding back again as well. We're getting that gap down. I think there's still room to sell over 1250s. They're going to have a hard time recovering with this type of news. Typically, we would already see the bounce through October and be closing the year flat right around this price. If they're able to hold it, maybe there's some room to sell puts, but I'm just going to sit on short calls and risk bounces on this. I'm getting into a lot of finals on AAOI. So most of my short calls are 85, 95% plus. The lowest strike that I've had in play is short 750s for January. Those are only 19% here. And we'll see if they go out of the money or not. There's room for this to bounce and retest. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried. We'll leave another manual alert around 10 and see if there's any reversal attempt. Everything else out of the money. 10s, 15s, 20s, 1750s, 1250s. A lot of premium in play on that one. So really good over time and still progressively locking profit. AFRM, pretty similar. AI, still have a ton of strikes on this. Still looking for a bounce back into 30. We got into 26s and haven't seen any progress over the last couple of days, but there's still room with NVIDIA and the others trying to run. We might get some more sympathy out of this. I've got stuff that has been swing short all the way down to 2250s from the time that we were at 35s, looking for those to go out of the money. Clear back here into 35s and 40s. I was selling stuff in the money all the way down to 2250s, looking for all of it to fail, right? And we rode that through earnings. There was no bounce. We've seen some progressive continued fade, and we have gone out of money on those where I was able to lock some of the first profit, but just leaving them in play for time and continuing to lock those each week as we get a new level down or some continued premium decay. AMD, short calls against short puts, everything into profit. The lowest ones are still around 15%, but I've got stuff all the way up to 65 and 75% on decay. Back here, we were selling the 115s, 105s calls. As we got under 100 into 95s, we started selling into the puts to balance that out with 95 and 190 short puts. We've seen the bounce since then back into 105s, 110s, and I'm about to probably add some more calls onto this. Our last alert was left out for 120 and 125. Those were never retested previously. We've still got some room and time where we could see a stronger bounce through October or into November. I think we're getting into an area where I'm probably going to start selling some more out of the money calls, maybe in the 115 zone. I'll leave an alert over 110 today. We'll see if we get a spike at all. If I don't see much movement first thing in the morning, then I'll probably start selling into those. Wow, ARM, pretty similar. This was a new IPO. We did everything with short calls right off of the open. There was that initial push and rejection of 65s. You can see as it failed, we never retested that price alert. We've sold off as low as 50s. We've bounced back into 56s, added back on the short calls there. A lot of sideways action since then that hasn't really broken out. We did retest that same level this week. I think it's about time to sell some more calls again. I've got stuff all the way from 17%, 28%, 55%, 63%, 95%. A lot of these are still in the 50 to 60 range on short calls all the way out until April. At this point, I'll probably sell the $55 to $60 calls into the spring as well, and just risking a bounce or a breakout attempt. There's a slight gap that could still close just over 60. I don't think we reach IPO highs or try to break out from that level. I'm going to continue adding into short call premium there. The Biohaven long with equity and short puts. 23% on equity. We're still flagging up and making new highs. We had started building in before the move, got a little bit of profit. There was a push to new highs and a pullback into 2250s. That's where I sold a lot of the puts. 2250 to 25 short puts are 18, 39, and 47%. These are December, January, and April. I'll take some more profit out of those today. We'll see if we can continue this flag and breakout. I think it's probably going to reject and roll over, but a little bit more trapping on the long side, maybe a touch of that higher band into 30s, and we'll see if we start to reject. Being a new chart or redrawn chart, that, you know, we're above previous resistance. There is room to run. I think it's just kind of overblown on the extended move. Probably time for some more people to take profit. So we'll see how far it goes. Got some more to take out of DE as well. Deer. So built in over the highs, 415 to 445. We saw those double tops and rejections. Started selling into the 410, 400, 420, 380 short calls all the way out to January. Those are 31%, 42%, 59%, and 82% on the short October 400 calls. Pretty far out. We've seen sell-offs as low as 365 almost, bouncing back into 390s. We're getting into a zone here where I'll probably start to add back a little bit more short calls, kind of like DPZ. We'll look at selling 415s to start, risk a bounce into that area. Plenty of profit to take out of play and room to add in some new ones and start building it. Disney is still doing pretty well too on that bounce. One of our only other longs off of the lows. We were shorting the 85 and $80 puts. We got that initial move into 85s where we were able to take some profit. We got another pullback under 80s where I reloaded again at some pretty good size, and we got that same bounce back into 85s, right? Multiple exits and adds back to core with new averages. I've got short 80, 85, and $90 puts, also some short 75s against still short 95 and $90 calls. The calls are 63 and 52%. The short puts are 59%, 51%, 37%, 15%, 13%, 11%. Everything out of the money and chopping around the mid-range. Calls above 90 and 95 out of the money, puts under 85 and 80 and 75 out of the money. We're just chopping around that 90 zone, right? We'll let it try to hold over VWAP. We'll see if we can get that extra push back into our alert. As we do that, I'll be taking some more profit out of these short puts. Still leaving the short calls as a hedge. I've taken profit out of those multiple times. We're running into expiration in December with, pushing 65% profits. Again, even on the bounce, just continue taking premium out of both sides and auto locking those as they decay. Yeah, Milton, along with CVNA and the new IPOs, we did also short CART. I would still look at selling some premium on this. We've had a few bounces over 30s where I added back. We got the bounce back into 27s and I added some more as well. I think you can still sell $27.50 to $30 calls, risking bounces on that. Probably go into December or January to get a little bit more premium. But we did talk about the deltas earlier in the week. At the 29 strike into January is a 36 delta, around 135. I'm still selling pretty close to at the money, but we've got a lot of profit already locked in on this one from the IPO, swing short with equity and short calls. Just no recovery on that still, right? So there's room for it to try to reverse. I really think they're going to have a hard time of getting it done. You're risking a bounce back into 30s, but I think anything over that is pretty much fair game. I gave you guys FedEx on a fast spike. We've just gone sideways since then. We sold off a little yesterday and bounced again, but we had seen this pull into 250s and this ramp up spike into 265s. That's where I told you watch it sideways, look at selling out of the money calls, expecting those to reject after getting juiced up pretty good. I went pretty far out. I went March, April, June. These are only 15 to 17% decayed. The January 280s, which was the ones that I gave you the closest term, are 41% in a week. Right? Seeing that spike into 265, still staying out of the money, selling the 280s into January, just a little bit of sideways action, a little bit of sell off, not even 10 points, 15 points, has decayed those 41% already. That's pushing 5 figures, not quite there yet. Really good premium, super low risk, and playing out with progressive exits. We also reloaded on 5.9 along with 4, so FIVN. Talked about selling $65 to $70 calls on that bounce into 67.50. You can see we did not progress beyond that. We've seen a little bit of a fade and some bounce attempts back into it. Short 65s for January, 26%. Short 70s for January, 33%. Right, and it's basically just been sideways choppy action, slow decay. There's still room to hold sideways and bounce a little bit through November, maybe make an attempt into the end of the year, but even that would probably only put us back into 70s or 75s. Slight gap after earnings, and still never retested our last alert of 77.50s. There's room. It's kind of tightening up on the bands. There might be a bigger move outside of the bands, but we'll keep progressively locking that profit and watch it to the upside if it does bounce. A lot more on 4 as well in tandem with that. January 65 calls, 36%. Pretty similar. We saw that rug pull, fast spike, and we were looking at selling anything over 60s into 65s, staying out of the money. I did sell some 55s as well, and those are only 17%. 65s into July, 37%. 65s into April, 43%. 65s into January, 27%. Pretty good premium there also. 4 and FRPT, pretty similar. We saw that fade and a little bit of sideways action. We talked about the bounce and the potential to fail the 65s there as well. Sold $60 calls while they were still in the money for December and January. Those are 61 and 52%. They are both 5-figure wins. We haven't seen much action, right? We got that extra sell-off, some initial profit. I left the alert out. We did not retest that. Still chopping sideways and decaying premium. Bunch more GameStop, Generac, Groupon, 22% on equity with Groupon. We talked a lot about everybody chasing that over 12s into 15s. We got that breakdown, right? So held up for a while, was able to flag and break after a triple top into new yearly highs. I just kept adding into 15s. We got a pretty good sell-off on Monday there, and it went nowhere yesterday, right? So we got the sell-off. I was already locking profit on Monday. I left the alert out for a bounce. There was no bounce yesterday and no retest. This is 22% on equity. My core average after exits and adding back into it is 1261. Again, that was off the rejection of 15s. And I think you can still look at selling 1250 and higher calls, risking bounces on that. I am going to build into some of those today as well. A lot more HTHT profit along with the rest of the crypto tickers. Got plenty of size on those, so I'm just going to continue to progressively lock them in. I am going to sell some more calls on Lulu. Equity is only about 3.4% with this bounce, and there's still room over 385s, but similar to Domino's, I think I'll sell 385 to 415 calls and risk some bounces and some attempts. Typically, we could still see a run through November. I'm going to do a little bit shorter term, November and December, and take profit over the next 3 to 4 weeks before we attempt that breakout if it happens. If it doesn't happen, we still have some pretty big gaps to close to the downside at the 335 area, 315s, 320s. So there's some room and time there as well. I think it's less likely that we get a flag and a breakout towards the end of the year. A lot more premium on MSTR, a lot of finals, 60, 70, 80, 90% wins across the board. Getting into some more profit with Netflix, finals on NNOX. New gains on NVIDIA, ON. I think we've been over most of these. Peloton, Roblox, probably sell some more Roblox. Got a lot in play, but progressively exiting these as well. Yeah, good bounce over the last couple of weeks from 25 into 30. I think it's about to top out. We've got an alert at 35, and there is still a gap to close just above that as well, but I'm going to sell into this attempt. Look at selling $35 to $40 calls into December and January, risking bounces and continuation, but the 37 delta for January is the 3750 calls. They were just over 200 yesterday. Riot, Rivian, Roku, all good gains. Oh, SOXS as well. With the semis bouncing, this really got crushed. Equity is pushing 15% on the short. Looking for that retest of 965s. I sold everything from 10, 11, and $12 calls while they were in the money at 1250s with ads on that bounce over 12. And we're getting into 17, 26%, 34%, 39%, 32%, and 49%. Also 20% on some 12s into May, pretty far out. Again, just continuing to take the profit on that. This was pretty low risk, very similar to VXX, the timing of the trade. And just looking at that bounce on the semis, the same time that we're still selling SMH premium almost back into our alert. I'm going to sell some more 155s on this today. I think that bounce is about done. There's still a little bit of the gap to close on SMCI, and they're trying to get up there, but we're pushing the upper band. It's a little bit out of range. We might get another pop. If we do, I'm going to sell some more calls on this as well. All right, team, market's open. I'll be back with you shortly. Thanks so much.